Hello and welcome to Skolaris Weekly. I'm your host Martin Klemsa. This is an exciting episode about using Skolaris for student options. Usually in senior years at a high school, students have various choices from various subjects. And it is the timetabler's task to group students together in option blocks. But how to put together these option blocks from those student options is anybody's guess. And it is a hard problem. And in fact, its complexity is very similar to the complexity of creating a timetable. So can Skolaris help you with this task? Well, it turns out it can, even though there is no student options item in the navigation. And as such, you won't find anything like this in the list of our features. But Skolaris' constraints allow us to configure the system to do this for the timetabler. So let's look at the setup and let's look at how this is done. First of all, we have to put in the students. Skolaris doesn't support putting in students as such. It won't recognize them as students, but it doesn't matter. We will use the class groups for students. Optionally, you can also use the subgroups, but this will be most obvious for the purpose of this demo. So I have put in 9 students, and you can choose each of them as 4 periods. We will assume that there are 15 subjects the students can choose from, and each student has to pick 4 subjects, 4 options. We will pick them randomly, or basically randomly. Now, another part of our setup will be rooms. We will need records matching the subject records for rooms. And each room will only accept its respective subject. So, for example, room art only accepts subject art. The important property is the capacity. The capacity of the room represents the size of the teaching group. In other words, the capacity will represent the number of students, or the maximum number of students taking one course, one optional course. So if, for example, if we have art and the capacity is 3, it means 3 students can have art at one moment with one teacher. If more students pick this option, then there will have to be 2 lessons, 2 separate courses of art, where those students will be placed automatically by Skolaris. Another important part of the setup is the timetabling matrix. In this case, it will be just one day, the name of which doesn't matter, perhaps options. And the 4 periods will represent the 4 options that the students must choose. So there will be 4 time slots, and the 4 options will be represented by 4 lessons for each of the student. Let's have a look. So, for example, Ada Lovelace chose English, Geography, Social Studies, Sports. Albert Einstein chose English, Geography, Physics, and Science. Carl Linné chose Business, Chemistry, English, German, and so on. So there are some options for each of these 9 students. Let's add more students. so that this example is more representative. And the size is 1. That is very important because this plays together with the room capacity that we've set up for our rooms. So Niels Bohr. And let's create 4 lessons, and he will pick 4 options from these 15 subjects. So let's say sports. There will be no teachers, by the way. And chemistry. And mathematics. And German. Let's add one more student with some options. And this student will choose geography, music, drama, and science. Once all the student options are put in, we need to go check the list of subjects. Here we want to see how many lessons of each subject are recorded, because this represents how many students chose this subject as their option. So, for example, we can see that no one chose physical education. So physical education won't be represented in our option blocks at all. Only one student chose physics. It might be the policy of the school to allow this or not allow this. We will not go into that here. Now that this is done, let's look at how to set up constraints to obtain some useful results from the setup. I will create an empty timetable called options draft 1. Now the constraint configuration cannot be the same as for regular timetable, that is clear. So let's examine how to configure constraints for this task. So placing students into buckets into the options is mapped into booking lessons to rooms. So we need this constraint. We need to book rooms. That is what we need. Subject not accepted by room. That means that the students will fall into the correct buckets. Lesson has to be booked, obviously. Room capacity, that is paramount. We cannot have more students in the bucket than is the capacity of the bucket, which is the room. And we've set it to 3, so only 3 students can study one option at a time. Obviously, room cannot be double booked. Room filling, that is a constraint that is turned off by default for your timetables. But it is important here because it will mean that Skolaris will try to make full buckets as opposed to any buckets. Room quota max periods. This is also turned off by default when you're doing normal timetabling. And this will make sure that there are not too many buckets for the particular subject. We will have to go back to the room list and see the configuration there. And subgroup level, but obviously. A student cannot have 2 lessons at the same time. 2 options at the same time. Let's go back now to see the room configuration. The quota. sorry, we need to check the subjects. So our buckets are size 3. So drama will need 2 buckets, English will need 2 buckets, and music and science will also need 2 buckets because we need to fit in all the students that chose the option. Other options will make do with 1 bucket. So let's check room drama, English, music and science and make sure that their quota is 2. I have already prepared configuration sets for this, so this will be option 2 buckets, and let's just review what I put in here. Maximum periods per cycle is 2. That's all. Room configuration sets are rarely used for regular timetabling. So drama, and then it was English, I believe. Already 2 buckets, and then I forgot the last 2 subjects, music and science. So room music has to have 2 buckets, and science will have 2 buckets as well. Very good. Now with this setup out of the way, let's see what happens when we press play and try to optimize this. So here we see a list of options, scheduled options for Albert Einstein. Well, that is not very useful, but as soon as I click all here, you will be able to see what's going on. The incredibly useful result here is that this is option block 1, this is option block 2, this is option block 3, and this is option block 4. So I cannot sort this by the colors, but if we read this correctly, it will mean that option block 1 will contain geography, German, English, and science. Option block 2 will have Spanish, the second bucket of science, business and art. Option block 3 is social studies, physics. This is, by the way, the only person that chose physics, so this is a 1 student option only, but it doesn't matter, it fit in nicely. Then there's this chemistry option, history option, drama, and first bucket of music, which has 1 student. And then there's the second bucket of music in the option 4, then maths, English, and second bucket of drama. Now you might wonder why is there only 1 student in this bucket of music and not 2? When we were talking about the constraints and how Skolaris will make the buckets equal. Well, it turns out that the drama and music is a certain combination. If I move this music around, for example like this, it will give me better distribution for music buckets, but only 1 drama here. And if I do this, then I'll have an incorrect setup because drama now has 4 lessons in this bucket, which is not possible because our bucket capacity is 3. And this is indicated by the health not being 100%. Let's run this again and see. Now let's suppose that our school doesn't allow for a bucket of size 1, so only 1 student cannot choose 1 option. So let's make this interesting and say that Caroline will choose physics instead of English. But that will mean that he cannot have this chemistry here. So if Linnaea has physics instead of English, then it would be something like this. And then all our options are messed up because this doesn't match anymore. And this is where Skolaris comes into play, because it will probably reschedule all the option blocks, redo all the option blocks to incorporate the new set of options. So let's do it. Let's change Karline to have physics instead of English. Say he changed his mind. Karline. I'll delete this lesson of English and add physics. If we look at our subjects, we will see now 2 people in the physics bucket afterwards, or not. Our timetable is now bad because we have unscheduled lesson of physics. If we put it here, this is not going to work because, sorry, if we even put it to a room, this is not going to work manually because the quota, maximum periods is now broken. We cannot have 2 lessons of physics at different times with only 1 student. They have to be combined. So how will Skolaris deal with this new setup? It dealt with it really quickly, and we can see that physics is now part of option block 4, together with the social studies, music, maths, and drama. Option block 3 now has music, chemistry, history, drama, and English. And the first 2 option blocks are probably the same. The interesting thing is that we now have correct buckets for drama, one of size 2 and the other of size 2, and for music as well, size 2, size 2. So this is how to deal with student options. This is how Skolaris can actually suggest the option block structure for you. Unfortunately, there is no button to say create the option blocks from this, but still this should be invaluable help when dealing with this type of problem. That is all for today. Thanks very much for watching and have a nice day. Bye.